what they would do is they go out to the field of tomatoes, they find a plant that produced one that was a tomato that was, it wasn't as ribbed as the other one, it was more smooth. Another plant over there would do it, another plant over there. And they would go and gather all these plants, all these tomatoes from these different plants. They'd save the seeds, grow it out the next year, and then you have the same thing. Most of them were ribbed, and you had a couple smooth ones here and there. Then, in Livingston, was doing the same thing. And he couldn't understand it. Picked the best tomatoes, and they just kept coming out that way. Well, one year he had a sport. And a sport is a spontaneous mutation, genetic thing. And what he got was a perfectly smooth, solid tomato. The only problem he had with it was that it was small. But he saved seeds from that one plant specifically. And he grew that out. And lo and behold, the next year, what came back? Solid, smooth fruit. So he goes to the different plants, and he finds the plant that produced the biggest tomatoes. Save seeds from those specific plants. And he did that for 5 years. And at the end of the 5th year, he had a nice size, smooth, low core, small core, solid tomato. And he released it, and that was the paragon. And, like anything else, initially, it took a while for it to catch on. He released another one in 1875. And then we get into the 1880s, and you see a lot more urbanization. And at this time, the tomato is starting to really take off. It's growing exponentially. And, get another picture here. Sorry. And in the 1880s there, Livingston was releasing like one a year. Bam, new variety, taking off exponentially. And to give an illustration of the growth the tomato had, there was a processing plant in New Jersey, and this one plant, in the 1880s, one plant produced 340,000 cans of tomatoes.
What?
That same plant also produced 43,000 gallons of ketchup. Now, by today's standards, it's not that big a deal, right? But in the 1880s, and this is the beginning of when the seed companies start going after each other. The tomatoes getting so popular, they want to attract customers. And unfortunately, what they did is either through selection or just plain old outright stealing and renaming, all these new varieties are popping up, And at the end of the 1880s, a study was done. They didn't have DNA testing then, but they could do comparison drawing. And what they found out was now we're up to, and remember I just said, right around the Civil War, there were just under 24 varieties. They were in the 1880s, 171 varieties. But the study showed that only 61 of them were really unique. So, and the popularity of the tomato continued into the 1890s. And in 1892, just one of Livingston's varieties, called the Beauty, in order to keep up with the demand, now they would sell to, consumers, but they also would sell to, other seed companies. And for him to keep up with the demand for just one variety, the Beauty, he had to produce 2.5 tons of seed. You're talking about an ounce. 2.5 tons of seeds just to keep up with demand for one variety. So now you get the picture about how popular it's become. Now, the seed companies, and I'm only going to name a few of them, but of course Livingston was huge by then. Another one was Henderson. Burpee started out as basically a minor player, but by the 1890s, Burpee, that's still around today, they had, they're starting to get in there, they're starting to take off, they're getting their share of the marketplace. Another one would be salsa. You don't even hear salsa anymore. Unless you're like me and you grow that old Ferris wheel tomato. That's a real good one. Everybody carried the Ponderosa. Isabel, Gregory, are just a few of the names, and you see a lot of those names, they're not around anymore. Morris, or Ferry, is now Ferry Morris. They were around, and they were kind of a major player in the tomato seed business. And also, what happened is they were really, all the seed companies were really targeting 3 consumer markets. Okay, one of them is the consumer backyard gardener, the canners, both professional and backyard gardeners, and the what they call the market gardeners, which, and again with the urbanization, they would have what we call farmettes, around the general area, and these people raise, tomatoes and other vegetables, but we're talking about tomatoes here today, and they would take them into the city and sell them. So those are the 3 target audiences, and so to address that, each one of them had an early market tomato, and every one of them, trust me, I looked at these old seed catalogs a lot, and every one of them would say, get your tomatoes to market 1 week or more before your competitor if you grow our early tomato. And of course, on the big tomatoes, what happened is they also send out representatives to these different fairs and stuff. And in 1890, one of these fairs, I think was down in Virginia, somebody found Ponderosa tomato. And everybody sold Ponderosa. But again, with the different seed companies, what really kind of happened was that they would either go by selection or just outright name it. But I kind of think that they went by selection. And so the Ferris wheel, the Bremer, the Alpha Pink, all these old big pink tomatoes were probably just spin-offs of the Ponderosa there. And the other thing is the Ponderosa, a sport of it turned up. And the only thing that was different in this particular case was that it was a red fruit instead of a pink fruit, and its name originally basically was Crimson Cushion. But we know it today as the beefsteak tomato. You have your beefsteak type of tomato. Plus there's also a variety called beefsteak, and that's the beefsteak, and it was a sport of the old Ponderosa. And so things basically continued like that. And into the latter part of the teens, the USDA and other people, excuse me again, I started creating determinate tomatoes. Now, I don't know, I'll just go real brief. Up until that point, all the tomatoes were indeterminate. Indeterminate tomato, it grows and produces throughout the season all the way to a filling frost. The other one was a minor player, but for completeness, I have to include the dwarves. Those dwarf tomatoes, varieties we could out equal. But they did the same thing. They grew until the killing frost. So what they wanted to do was create something that was kind of good for canning, kind of produce all at once, and so get them all and can them. And so several projects went on to create determinants. And one of the first determinants was created by the USDA, which is called the Mark tomato. And the other significant thing about the Mark is it was the first one to offer disease resistance. Okay, this is a personal thing. What they really mean is disease tolerance. Okay, because if you have a sufficient amount of disease, I don't care what plant it is, it's going to die. It's going to give up the ghost sooner or later. But some of them will hang in there and get a crop out for you, where others won't. And so, like I say, the Marklow had that disease resistance built in. And again, we're still going on with the popularity of tomatoes. everybody's doing it. And the next thing, it's not a major impact, maybe from a national, historic level, but it's kind of important to us around here, okay? And some people don't realize this, but if they weren't a major player, they were a major minor player, and that was the canning operations out in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, just out from here. And in fact, again, thanks to Angie's printing abilities, I have collected, and you can still find this. If you go out through Morgan County, the way I got these was a buddy of mine, knew that I was looking for it. And he went to a yard sale, and he got 2 of them for 50 cents or a quarter or whatever, about 2 for a quarter or something like that. And you can still go out to yard sales and find, this is an large one obviously, but you can still find the old canning labels from the companies, okay, out in Berkeley Springs, and you'll still be able to pick them up at yard sales. Okay, so we have a Stony Ridge company out in Berkeley Springs, and it says Crossroads Canning Company, Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. It's even got the zip code. We got Little Miss, and Little Miss, it was Little Miss Tomatoes Incorporated out in Berkeley Springs. And that one's even got a recipe on the label. Woo-hoo-hoo. And the one thing about this is they used the old nomenclature, okay, and they called it a number 303 can. That was the size of the cans. Now, Spud probably remembers them when they taught, they didn't say like 15 ounces or something like that. They'd say, a number 303 or a number 2 or number 1, So they had different numbers that they used back then. And this one, Angie found. I don't know where he found that label. eBay. Now, I've heard a couple of reasons why the companies or businesses failed at West Virginia. Some of it was manpower in World War II. They basically closed down in 45. And the other one was late blight. They had a late blight problem. And so I'm not sure which one of them's true. I've just heard both reasons. Maybe it was a combination of the two, I don't know.